Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hello, 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 and welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the worlds of zoos, aquariums, conservation organizations, and general animal weirdness. Y'all, I am recording this episode late on Tuesday and into early Wednesday this week, which is earlier than I usually do, because I am going to be on the road as Wednesday, Thursday, and then gigging on Friday happens. So this one's going to be a little bit early, so it might be a little bit shorter, although honestly, I do think I have a lot of stories already, including some kind of awkward ones. So it's going to be an interesting week, y'all. But what I did want to let you know that, if you do send me stuff on Wednesday or Thursday for this week's episode, you're not going to hear those stories or your name until next week, but I will be holding on to them and may still drop them into next week's episode. So feel free to send me stuff. And as a matter of fact, I can use that to remind y'all that you can all send me stuff if you see it. You can send it to my email, rossifaripod@gmail.com, or tag me in it on social media at Rossifari everywhere except for TikTok, where I'm at Rossifaripod. And you should be following along to all of that and subscribe to the podcast and become a patron and support it by going to patreon.com/Rossifari and all those things. Oh, okay. I've said enough about all of that. I got to tell y'all, as I said, I am recording this on Tuesday, and Wednesday is going to be my last performances of MDQ out here in Sullivan. It's been a wonderful, quick, unexpected trip. I had an absolute blast out here, and actually got to go to 2 different facilities that you'll be hearing episodes from. So despite the fact that it was so last minute, we're going to have 2, maybe even 3 episodes of Rossifari from it. So always fun to have that happen. I want to say an especially large thanks to the team at Scoville Zoo in Decatur. They opened all the doors and let me do all kinds of cool stuff and meet all kinds of cool animals and share a couple of cool stories. And wow, it was a really special day that I got to have at the zoo today. So I cannot wait to share all of that with y'all. Now, before I move on to the zoo news, I actually got a bit of a chastising in a message this week. Not a serious one, but I was told that it's very important that I update y'all on Project Dragonfly and on my puppies, because I have not been doing a very good job of doing either of those on here. So I'll start with my puppies, and they are doing well. Flam has officially lost all of her baby teeth, which is nice because she does like to chomp occasionally. So nice to have the less pokey teeth coming in. And otherwise, she's doing great. She has gotten very fluffy and is just pure chaos, just pure chaos. It's astonishing how she will, with no intention, just cause the most havoc and chaos in the best way. It makes me really, really happy. And Paradiddle remains the perfect lab, just perfect and a lab. Likes water, occasionally is really dumb, and is just the perfect happy dog that she is. And Lexi, my older Chihuahua, is just great, doing well. She has a daytime napping spot now and a nighttime napping spot, which is different than her sleep spot. And it's all going quite well for Lexi, although she did actually have to go on a bit of an adventure recently, just going to a cabin where there was a lake, and she refused to get out of the bed that was set up in the car for her until there was a bed set up in the cabin, at which point she went to that bed. So Lexi is living the life that I think we all secretly want to live. And then as far as my update on Project Dragonfly, I don't really have one yet. So I think I mentioned that I was taking the summer off and that I've enjoyed certain aspects of the program and have also very much not enjoyed certain aspects of the program or felt that they were right for me. And the time to sign up for the next semester's classes is upon us. I believe I need to sign up very soon if I want to start them. And I just don't have the motivation to do it. Again, it's not a work ethic thing, and I do think it is a great program for a lot of people. I just don't know that it's the right fit for me. And I don't think I need to be in it unless I truly decide that it is right for me, at which point it should be easy to plug back in. So I don't think I'm moving forward with it right now, but I reserve the right to change my mind in the next couple days and throw myself into it. One of the biggest problems that I've encountered is just that when I talked to them about admissions and how it would work with the lifestyle of a traveling musician, they said it wouldn't be a problem because, they have people like flight attendants and stuff who travel all the time for their jobs and go through Project Dragonfly. But what I don't think they were considering is the fact that, and I'm not saying they were, wrong or any, I'm just saying I don't think it's the same thing because I don't get to take weekends or a week off. I don't get PTO. If I'm under contract, I have to be working. And if the dates of the specific in-person classes happen to line up, over a 6 or 8 or 12 week tour or a really big contract for me, then the decision becomes, do I miss a huge contract for myself and lots of money and, career growth things so that I can be in person for that one class, for that one weekend maybe? Or do I just not take the core classes that I need to take? So that is the issue that I am having the most. There are others, but that's the big one. And that is what I'm struggling to try to figure out right now. But as of this moment, I'm not super committed to the program, which is probably not the best way to go about getting a master's. So that is the update that I have on that. And with all of that said, I think it's time to get into it.
Time for Zoo News. Time for Zoo News.
All right, y'all. So, we've been starting off this section with births and deaths lately, but I actually want to start with a story that is a fairly big story right now, and that is really disconcerting and is honestly kind of hard to talk about. And I kind of want to just, give both sides of it. So we're gonna chat for a minute about the fact that Mote Marine Laboratory has released the details on the death of Hugh, one of the manatees that lived there. Now, you may remember I talked about the fact that Hugh passed away back in April and was heartbroken. I got to meet Hugh and his brother Buffett at Mote, and it's an amazing experience, an amazing memory for me. And so I've kind of been waiting to see what the necropsy results would be because the death was very sudden and very unexpected. And I need to give you a graphic content warning. I will use the cleanest language that I can, but if you've got littles listening, this might be a great time to go tell them to watch Paw Patrol or whatever the kids are watching nowadays. All right. So basically, what the necropsy said is that Hugh died from a 14.5 centimeter rip in his colon caused by a sexual encounter with his brother Buffett. Now, I need y'all to pause right now and stop anthropomorphizing and completely freaking out about the whole, quote, incest thing, okay? This is really common amongst wild animals. There are many species that do that, and it is not uncommon for manatees. Also, along with the brother thing, that does mean they're both male. And again, something that is commonly found in nature. Nothing weird, nothing strange or bad about mote. Now, where it does get a little tricky here is that the United States Department of Agriculture states that Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium failed to act to protect Hugh, which led to his death. So the USDA is stating that Hugh's death was Mote's fault. And I'm quoting the USDA report here directly, which states, employees observed high-intensity sexual behavior between two adult male manatees, which resulted in rectal penetration of the smaller male at approximately 10 a.m. Shortly after this interaction, employees collected a fecal sample from the smaller male and confirmed the presence of fresh blood. The sexual behavior continued throughout the day with periods of rest between high-intensity interactions and occasional penetration. At approximately 5:15 p.m., the larger male was observed penetrating the smaller male again. When the larger male swam away, the smaller male was seen unresponsive at the bottom of the pool. It was confirmed that he had passed. So that's what the USDA is saying. They are saying that the staff at Mote witnessed it happening repeatedly, and did nothing about it, which directly led to the passing of Hugh. Mote has since released a statement, and I'm just going to read it in its entirety. It is long, but it is thorough, and I think, they deserve the right to defend themselves thoroughly. So this is what Mote released. Given the recent media coverage of the events surrounding the passing of our beloved and recently deceased resident manatee, Hugh, it is important that we share an overview of the facts to ensure complete clarity on the cause of Hugh's death. Throughout the events leading up to Hugh's passing, Mote acted within the professional standards and practices that we have observed throughout the 27 years Hugh and Buffett have lived together at Mote, and is recommended by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA, and the Manatee Rescue and Rehabilitation Partnership, MRP. On the day of Hugh's passing, Hugh and Buffett engaged in natural, yet increased, mating behavior observed and documented in manatees, both in managed care and in the wild. This was the first time such heightened mating behavior was witnessed between the two manatees. However, each year, like other male manatees in both the wild and in managed care, Hugh and Buffett would exhibit approximately 2 months of seasonal behavioral changes, including, but not limited to, an increase in sexual behavior. The manatees were under heightened observation throughout the day, and the animal care team was in constant close communications with, and following the direction of, the attending veterinarians throughout the day. Hugh and Buffett were both observed initiating and mutually seeking interactions from each other throughout the day, and there were no obvious signs of discomfort or distress such as listing, crunching, or active avoidance that would have triggered a need for intervention. Following the direction of the veterinarians, distraction rather than physical separation was chosen because separation has previously caused undue anxiety and negative effects in both manatees. In an effort to redirect the manatee's attention and decrease undesirable behaviors, animal care staff used positive reinforcement tools such as high-value rewards and enrichment that had previously been successful. Since opening its doors, Mote has always prided itself in providing the utmost care for all of its animals. In fact, a week prior to this devastating incident, the USDA performed an annual inspection, and our staff was recognized by the USDA for the high quality of care provided to our manatees. The inspector even noted that he would love to show our facility as a gold standard to other facilities. And that is what we will continue to strive for, serving as a gold standard for animal health and well-being, as we have shown throughout our history. As such, we are redoubling our efforts to ensure our animal care operations meet or exceed existing and evolving policies, recommendations, and guidelines of the AZA, MRP, Animal Welfare Act, USFWS, and USDA. Thank you for your continued support during this heartbreaking time. Our Mote family continues to mourn the loss of Hugh, and we know you do too. Your kind words and meaningful memories of Hugh are truly appreciated. What a terrible situation. What an absolutely horrible situation for the team at Mote to have to deal with. I hate that the USDA is kind of throwing them under the bus. One of the greatest things that comes from having animals in captivity is that their people know them best. Doesn't mean they're always going to be 100% correct, but they know them well. They knew that separating the two of them had caused problems before, and that these sexual encounters happened regularly and were not problematic. And I guarantee you that every single person who observed what happened that day thought they were doing the right thing and taking the best care of those animals, and have lost a hell of a lot of sleep because of what happened. But at the end of the day, the animals that we have in captivity are wild animals. They need to be allowed to behave within reason, as safely and as controlled as possible, as wild animals. And in this case, it led to a fatal interaction, and that is heartbreaking. And my heart is broken. I loved interacting with those two. But, I don't think it's 100% fair to say that it is Mote's fault, like the USDA is. Now, granted, I have not read the entire report, and I freely admit that I have a bias towards Mote because the thing is, I've been there. I've been behind the scenes. I've met the people who took care of these animals, and I know that they were doing always everything that they thought was in the best interest of the animals. So it is a bias, but it is an informed bias, and I tend to side with Mote on this. I believe that they are a gold standard institution, and I believe that this was a tragic event that, could have been prevented by them stepping in and separating the manatees, but there was no real way to know that this was going to happen. And yet there is a historical reason to believe that separating the manatees would have actually caused stress and problems, which obviously the goal is to not have that happen. So, sorry to the team at Mote for having this still very fresh and raw wound reopened in such a negative way. And I told both sides of the story so y'all can decide for yourselves. But I, for one, still love Mote Marine Lab and trust them and send all of my love and support to the team. Also, stepping away from that story, as a specific story, but I just wanted to take a moment because I like to be so honest with all of you all on here. And I just wanted to take that moment to kind of share with you that, I know that when you hear a story like that, it's hard. I know it's a hard listen. And I want you to know that it's a hard tell too. I had to take off my headphones and walk away and go hug some stuffed animals and text some friends and distract myself for a while after reporting on that. And that's, just what happens sometimes. I want y'all to know that I will always do my best to share these stories with you and to really try to give at least my interpretation of them and kind of how I see them. But, it's hard. It's hard to do zoo news sometimes. And this is one of those episodes. And that's okay. We'll get to some other news here and it'll be better and then sad. It's news. It's what it is. But, I just wanted to share that with you if you're sitting here and thinking, oy, I came to hear parody songs about, zoo news, and instead I got that story. That was a tough go. Just know that you're not alone in feeling that way. Like, tough news is hard for the people who go through it and for the people who talk about it and for the people who listen to it. So I don't know, just wanted to share that that's part of the community that we have built here. And if you're feeling sad right now, you're not alone, even if you're literally sitting alone. All right, well, let's move on to some births, and we're going to start with a super cool baby alert from the Los Angeles Zoo, where one of their critically endangered Santa Catalina Island rattlesnakes gave birth to 6 snakelets. Rattlesnakelets. Ratlets? Nah, snakelets. We're going with snakelets. And rattlesnakes are viviparous, so they don't lay eggs. The snakes actually hatch inside the mother, and then she has a live birth, which is pretty cool. So this is a rattlesnake that is critically endangered, and also, despite the name, has no rattle. So very cool, very unique birth at the LA Zoo. Zoo New England has announced the birth of a healthy 6-foot-tall, 184-pound baby boy red panda. No, I'm kidding. That would be huge. It is a baby boy giraffe. And so far, he appears healthy, vigorous, and curious, which is really, really cool. So congratulations to the team at Zoo New England. The Wilds, which is the safari park that is associated with the Columbus Zoo, has announced the birth of 2 male Grevy's zebra foals, or zeblets, which is just really, really exciting. In fact, all 3 parents involved are first-time parents. Wait, what? 3 parents, did you say, John? Why, yes, I did. The father of both zeblets is Two-Step, which is just an adorable name for a male zebra. And it's his first time having babies. The first zeblet was born to mom Cat, and the second was born to Lisa Marie. So Two-Step apparently did one step with each mother, and they both had babies. So he's a dad to 2 new zeblets. Pretty cool. And then last but not least for births this week, the San Diego Zoo has officially announced the birth of 4 adorable capybara pups, or caplets. They are doing well. They are the first cappies that are born at the zoo since 2016. And they are very excitable animals. They run around a lot, even as little babies. And it's just a very fun, exciting thing to see. So congratulations to the team at the San Diego Zoo. And of course, that moves us on to the deaths portion of Zoo News, and we've only got 3 this week. First of all, the Tulsa Zoo has announced the passing of Kasama, their African painted dog, who was 11 years old, and at that age was the second oldest African painted dog in AZA care. So obviously a great example of a zoo taking good care of an animal well into the later stages of life. And unfortunately, Kasama had been diagnosed with kidney disease and degenerative myelopathy, which is a disease that causes muscle atrophy in the rear and also limb weakness in the rear limbs. Unfortunately, the quality of life went down, and so the decision was made to euthanize who was a very, very good puppy. What a good girl. The Denver Zoo has announced the passing of Siheks, a Rocky Mountain goat kid, on Saturday, July 22nd. The day before, the animal care team noticed that Siheks was being abnormal, doing a chewing motion repetitively and also showing a lot of lethargy, and that he also wasn't really interacting with the care team as much as usual. So, of course, they let the vet team know, and the vet team immediately started some treatment, just supportive treatment, while trying to do some tests and figure out exactly what was going on. And unfortunately, they were not able to figure that out out before Siheks passed away. They have done a post-mortem exam, and it was nonspecific, so there will be a full histopathy and a variety of other disease screening tests done to try to figure out exactly what happened. This was a very young animal. And the zoo community had just fallen in love with Siheks. Keepers in particular were just really in love with this young little goober and his big personality. So this is a huge blow for the Denver Zoo, and we send our condolences. And actually, we have another passing of an important goat to announce, this time out at Zoo Atlanta, which has announced that Wembley, a very famous goat that had lived in their petting yard until recently when they retired, has passed away. Now, it's really interesting how popular this goat was. So they have a goat yard where you can go in and, pet and brush and everything, the goats. And when I first went to Zoo Atlanta with Danica, one of my early guests, she was like, "You have to meet Wembley." And I was like, oh my goodness. This was still when the podcast was in its infancy. And I was like, I get to meet an animal. And she took me to the goat yard, to the open to the public goat yard. And she introduced me to the keepers there. And she was like, "Hey, this is John. We're friends. He does a podcast and he needs to meet Wembley." And all of the keepers were like, "You have to meet Wembley. Wembley's the best. Wembley's the best. He's awesome." And I was like, look, I like goats, but really, you're all zookeepers. You are at one of the few zoos in the country with panda bears. And there are red pandas here and binturongs and all the cool things. And you're all really excited about Wembley the goat. And that's because Wembley was awesome. I got to meet Wembley, and Wembley was awesome. Just an absolutely huge personality. He was the largest member of the petting zoo herd, and he oftentimes was very sneaky in how he got goats out of resting spots that he wanted to rest in. He was a little troublemaker, a little chaotic when it came to the other goats there, but he was actually great with the humans, even the tiny ones. And for a 200-pound goat, that's really impressive. So yeah, just an awesome personality. And everyone there, like I said, really, really, really loved Wembley, who unfortunately had to be euthanized because of age-related difficulties. So yeah, we're all going to miss Wembley. And, Danica and that team, they were right. They were absolutely right. I needed to, and I'm glad that I got to meet Wembley. So next we have two stories from the Cincinnati Zoo. The first is about Juno, the sloth baby or slothlet that has recently been born at the zoo. It was expected that Juno would be on display with Lightning, her mom, in the animal ambassador area by now. Unfortunately, the public debut has been delayed a little bit. Juno is fine, but Lightning has actually had some complications, getting an infection caused by a retained placenta. She is doing fine, but is not quite 100% herself yet, with an appetite that hasn't been working recently. Hasn't been working, that's a weird way to say that. Hasn't just been like as good as it normally is recently. And so she did get another exam yesterday, and there were no major concerns, but they're making sure that Lightning is 100% before the duo ends up back out on display. So hopefully soon you'll be able to go see Juno and Lightning being slowly adorable together at the Cincinnati Zoo. And as I mentioned, we have a second story out of there, which is less animal-centric, but is still really interesting. So the Cincinnati Zoo is located in Hamilton County in Ohio. And yes, I know most of you thought I was going to say Cincinnati, but that too. And they are asking for a tax increase to be placed on the upcoming ballot on November 7th, that, if approved by voters, would increase the tax property owners pay for the zoo, because part of property taxes go to the zoo, by almost $4 per $100,000 of property value. So in other words, the zoo would end up pulling $12.86 per every $100,000 of house value from each citizen instead of the current $9.01. So this is being asked for to help deal with the increase of the cost of feeding animals. And right now, there is a board of commissioners for Hamilton County that gets to decide whether or not this measure will even be put on the ballot, which is weird to me. I know government is always weird, but basically, there's a group of people who get to decide whether the citizens get to decide whether or not they want their own property taxes to go to the zoo at a slightly higher rate. And again, we're talking less than $4 per every $100,000 worth of property. Not a lot of money to have Fiona in your backyard, I'm just saying. So hopefully the commissioners will push this through. And if so, then the people will get to vote. And, the Cincinnati Zoo is so beloved, and Fiona keeps being voted like Cincinnatian of the Year and stuff, that I'm fairly sure it will pass. I guess there is some reluctance to even put this on the ballot by some of the people involved, which is why a lot of op-eds are starting to show up in places like Cincinnati.com, encouraging the people that can make this decision to, let the people vote. It doesn't mean it's going to be automatic, but let the people vote on whether or not they want this property tax increase. And I, for one, agree with those op-eds. Of course, I would send all of the property tax money to the Cincinnati Zoo if it was up to me. But slightly biased over here. But hopefully that goes through, and hopefully the zoo's able to get this increase that they need to help feed the animals and keep doing the amazing work that they're doing. One of the things that I have learned about in my life recently, thanks to a friend who is helping manage this situation, is just how challenging it can be, and also how rewarding, to have a child with diabetes. My friend Liz, who regularly contributes to Zoo News and also sends me wildly inappropriate humor all the time, and I'm appreciative for that, has a daughter, Nancy, who actually, y'all heard, Nancy was a guest. She was the one who did the Zoo Camp report last year, and she has diabetes. And so I've been learning through her just about how much goes into managing that for a child, which is why I'm extra impressed that the Bronx Zoo teamed up with Montefiore for their annual Family Diabetes Day event recently. So this was an event, obviously, that was for young people diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and they were able to go to the zoo, enjoy the zoo, and also go into the Great Hall to learn about new technologies in managing diabetes. I think that's just a really, really cool thing where people who have this issue could all get together, learn, but also enjoy the zoo. And I love that there are constantly new developing technologies and stuff because, it's a heck of a disease. And if managed properly, kids are able to have, pretty normal lives and do some really cool stuff. So it's awesome to see the Bronx Zoo getting involved with that particular mission. Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington, D.C. is celebrating the birthdays of their 3 giant pandas. Unfortunately, this is currently expected to be the last birthday celebrations that these pandas have in D.C., as their loan was extended to December 7th, 2023, but has not been extended again. There have been some hints that work is being done to make sure that either these pandas or maybe some new pandas would stay in DC. It's obviously a legacy of that zoo that they have had panda bears since the Nixon administration. And unfortunately, there's not been any progress on those talks that has been made public. So maybe, hopefully. But for now, if you're enjoying seeing all of this birthday content, and you should definitely go check out the birthday content, it's adorable, and you want to see these pandas in person, it's time to head to DC, y'all, because we got a few months, and then they're going to be heading back to China, and DC will be panda bearless for the first time in a long time. Again, unless that changes. But go to the Smithsonian Zoo, y'all. It's a good place. One thing that I struggle with a lot with zoo visits in general is that if I ever see something that looks a little wonky to me, whether or not I should say something, because my attitude is always like, well, this is a good zoo and they know what they're doing and keepers are pros and all of that jazz. So they probably know what's going on and I don't want to bother them. But, sometimes it's really good that if you see something, you should say something. And that proved to be true recently at the Topeka Zoo, where one of the guests went to staff members to say that there was a trumpeter swan who was bleeding. The staff jumped into action and were able to treat the swan quickly, and it turns out there was something going on called a blood feather, which, if left untreated, can be fatal. The veterinarian removed the problem feather, cleaned it, gave her pain medication, and put her back on her pond with her mate, where the trumpeter swan is thriving. So this is a great example of where literally in this case, if the person hadn't said something and staff hadn't walked by quickly enough, the animal could have died. So, awesome. And maybe for those of us who sometimes worry about bugging zookeepers about things, maybe it's good to sometimes do that. Back in May, I shared a story with you all about the fact that a grocery store chain, Tops Market, which is in the Buffalo area, realized that one of the lobsters that was shipped to their store was not a red lobster like it looked like at first glance, but was in fact one of the rarest orange lobsters out there, a 1 in 30 million find. They reached out to our friends at the Aquarium of Niagara, who worked with the AZA to take in this lobster and find it a permanent home. And now the lobster, which is named Larry Lombardi, is living at the Kansas City Zoo on exhibit for the world to see, an amazing rare orange lobster. And I just love that story. I love the fact that the grocery store employees realized what was up. I love the fact that the Aquarium of Niagara stepped in and were able to help and then coordinated with the AZA, all for this lobster that was going to be on somebody's dinner plate. And now it gets to live a huge, awesome, long, exciting life at the Kansas City Zoo. So just a really cool story that brings me a lot of joy and shows how many people had to be involved in the placement of this one almost meal lobster. It's really cool what zoos and aquariums and such do for these animals.
Stereotypical animal podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
All right, so we're going to start off with an update on a story from last week. I mentioned that the guides at Yellowstone are talking about how if you see carins, you should knock them over. Carins being large man-made rock formations where you stack smaller rocks on top of larger rocks and such, and to not go and make your own carins. Well, that is true at Yellowstone and at some other parks. However, it is worth mentioning that at some parks, they actually don't want you to knock down carins that you see because the carins are trail markers that were made a long time ago, and it's important that they are left in place. Now, to be clear, that does not mean that you should be making your own carins. You should not do that. But if you see carins at a park, make sure that you've done the research before you knock them over, just in case it turns out that it was the actual park that built the carins rather than somebody who wants to destroy the ecosystem. And as such, you will be knocking down trail markers and then getting people lost and eaten by wolves or whatever happens when you get lost in a... I know. You know what's funny? I constantly say wolves aren't scary and we need to stop that kind of thing and protect them in conservation news, literally all the time. And then what is the go-to stupid joke that I make as soon as I talk about getting lost in a park? It's getting eaten by a wolf. But truth is, I'm not worried about getting eaten by a wolf, and you shouldn't either. You also shouldn't knock down carins unless you should. Look into it. Mahola Hola Wildlife Rehab is reminding the people of Africa that when you try to poison predators to get rid of them, it has a much larger effect. So recently, a lioness and her cubs were found poisoned in Africa. along with 46 dead birds and 9 vultures who had been poisoned but were still alive. So that is 55 birds that were also victims to this poisoning. Now, Moholoholo was able to take those 9 birds into rehab, truly rehabilitate them, and will now be releasing them, which is an incredible story. But it is just a friendly reminder that this is a major problem in the conservation world. People worry about lions eating their livestock or coming after them, the people themselves. And this is true of other predators as well. You're going to hear an episode soon from Dr. Laurie Marker of the Cheetah Conservation Fund, who talks about the importance in the conservation world of explaining to people that predators need to exist and helping them coexist with these predators. And it's not just important for the predators, but it's also obviously important for the birds that live around there and for carrion eaters who then eat poisoned carrion and die, and for all of that kind of stuff. So a really important message and something we all need to be thinking about as we look into how we can help conserve species. British conservationists have teamed up with the governments of Guam and the United States to return the Guam kingfisher, also known as the Sihek, back to the wild. And they're actually using a bunch of U.S. zoos to work as quarantine units for the flighted fledglings that are going to be headed back out into the wild, or the kingfishlets, as they may say. And so there are currently 4 birds that have been hatched and are collected with other eggs and heading to Guam, with the expectation that an additional 9 will be heading out next year. This is an effort that is so many different zoos, but they're also not the ones leading it. Like I said, they're just helping, which is why it's in conservation news and not zoo news. But it's just this amazing thing, this huge consortium across multiple lands and with multiple zoos and multiple partners, all to get this one bird species back into Guam. And in case you're wondering, the Guam kingfisher was wiped out entirely by the accidental introduction of brown tree snakes to the island of Guam at the end of the Second World War. It was accidental. It was not meant to happen, but it did, and it wiped out not just kingfishers, but also other birds, mammals, and lizards, including the Guam rail and the Guam flycatcher as well. So this is a big step to try to right that wrong, and I think it's a really beautiful story. It still never ceases to amaze me just how many people and organizations and stuff it really takes to save a species. I didn't know whether to put this next one into conservation news or other news, but I'm throwing it in here just because I think it's kind of fun. So it turns out that European corvids, including magpies and crows, are taking the anti-bird spikes that you see on a lot of buildings and that people put up to try to keep birds away from, various things they don't want birds on, because mostly they're worried they'll poop on them. They're actually using these spikes to build nests now. Sometimes they are building the nests around the spikes and using the structure of the spikes to support the nest. And at other times, they're actually stealing the spikes from the buildings and other structures and then taking them and using those spikes as building materials. I love corvids so freaking much, and this story just brings me so much joy. So it's cool to see them adapting to that situation. And that's also why I do think of it as kind of a conservation story, because it's literally the birds conserving themselves and protecting their own habitat, although it is admittedly habitat that was built by humans and is habitated by humans and such. But inhabited? That's the word I was looking for. Habitated? I don't know. Anyway, that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, all right now, it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
All right, just 2 quick stories in other news, and they're actually both about media. We're going to start with the bad one. Roku and the Roku channel have announced a new television show called Reptile Royalty, and the tagline is "Running a Zoo takes a special breed." And they're not wrong about the fact that the family in question that runs the zoo is a special breed. They are not accredited by anybody. They are well known for doing some really bad husbandry things, and like they have plenty of videos out on the internet and stuff where they purposely overfeed snakes and do all kinds of crazy stuff just to try to get clicks and likes. They are a disgusting group. I'm not even saying the name on here or what the facility is, but if you see anything for reptile royalty, stay the heck away from it. A bunch of herpers have already reached out to Roku and said no, and a bunch of keepers have reached out and said no, and so far there has been no response from Roku. But it looks like they're trying to basically create the next Tiger King situation, only with reptiles, which Tiger King did make a lot of money, but let's not maybe be gross humans for money. Just a thought. On a happier note, though, one of the podcasts that I absolutely love, Science Versus, has an episode out right now called How Bats Break Science. And it's all about, how bats break science. So I highly recommend that you check out Science Versus and listen to that, because it's a really amazing look at how bats are some of the most unique mammals out there. And you can find that podcast wherever you find Rossifari. Lucky you.
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
And that brings us to our animal holidays for the week. So we are ending July, which is Parks and Recreation Month, Plastic Free July, National Bison Month, and Wild About Wildlife Month. And we are launching August, which is National Parks Month, National Catfish Month. August is for Antelope Month, which is an amazing name, and Asian Elephant Awareness Month. And the day that this is dropping is the 28th, which is not a day, but the 29th of July is International Tiger Day. And then the 31st is both World Ranger Day and National Mutt Day. And then we've got on the 1st, it's Marine Protected Area Days and Manga Bay Awareness Day. And then the second is Golden Lion Tamarin Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. So there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done and will be out while I am crazily driving around this country. Always a good time. I would like to say thank you to all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Laura Schenk, Kristen Dickey, and Stephen Williamson. And I'd like to thank everybody who contributed to this week's episode. Anya Keene, Colleen Lenahan, Kim Cooley, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Madeline Weaver, Laura Schenk, Ken Tryon, Liz Dunlevy, Karen Musklow, Ali Malensky, Sam Stock, and Emily Poche. And remember, friends, the words Newsy credits backwards are Steiderk Yiswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.